Hello guys, so now we shall be discussing regarding the Circle of Willis. Okay, so before we start on discussing with the Circle of Willis, first of all you have to know that what are the arteries that are responsible, or what are the arteries that give blood supply to the brain. So a topic of discussion would be blood supply to the brain. So what are the different kinds of arteries that give the blood supply to your brain? So first of all, you need to know this important thing, that the blood supply to the brain is mainly done by two important arteries, two important systems. What are those two important systems? One is called as vertebrobasilar system. One is called as vertebrobasilar system. And the second one is called as the internal carotid system. Internal carotid system. So two important systems over here. One is called as a vertebrobasilar system and the other one is called as your internal carotid system. First of all, let us see what is this vertebrobasilar system. So all of you know that this is your heart, right? So from the heart, from the left ventricle, you see an aorta that is coming out, right? So this part of the aorta which is coming out like this is called as your arch of aorta, and the next one which is going down is called as a descending aorta. Now this aorta has got three important openings, three important connections. What are those three important connections? See here. This one is called as your brachiocephalic trunk. Okay. What is this branch? This is called as your brachiocephalic trunk. Next, here you have got another branch, here you have got a third branch. So this brachiocephalic trunk divides into two branches. One is called as the right subclavian, another one is called as the right common carotid artery. Okay, so this one over here is called as your brachiocephalic trunk. Brachiocephalic trunk is divided into your right subclavian artery. This is called as your right common carotid artery. Okay, this particular right common carotid artery is again divided into two more branches. What are those two more branches? One you call it as the external carotid artery, another one is called as the internal carotid artery. On the left side, this is called as your left common carotid. This is called as your left common carotid artery. So directly here, left common carotid artery arises from the aorta. So left common carotid artery is dividing into two branches. This is called as internal carotid and this one is called as your external carotid branches. Next, here this artery which you can see over here is called as your left subclavian artery. One is called as your right subclavian. This is called as your left subclavian artery. This is called as your left subclavian artery. So what are the different arteries you have got over here? Right common carotid, left common carotid. And this is right internal carotid artery, left internal carotid artery, right external carotid artery and left external carotid artery. Okay. So what do you mean by vertebrobasilar system? What do you mean by vertebrobasilar system is that from your vertebral artery, from your right subclavian artery and from your left subclavian artery, there are branches that are arising. See, there is a branch that is arising from the right subclavian artery. There is a branch that is arising from the left subclavian artery. So these two branches which are going up are called as vertebral arteries. So this is called as your vertebral artery, but on the left, and this is called as your vertebral artery, but on the right. Okay. So these two vertebral arteries, they go up like this. Here also the vertebral artery, it goes up like this, and these two vertebral arteries join together and they are forming a single artery, right? Both the vertebral arteries joining together to form a single artery. So this artery which has been formed over here is called as your basilar artery. So this was the thing I was telling you. What do you mean by vertebrobasilar system? From the vertebral arteries on both the sides joining together to form the basilar artery, this system is called vertebrobasilar system. Okay. So another system is called as internal carotid system. So what we will do is that we shall in detail discuss about this vertebrobasilar system, and then you will perfectly understand what are the important things and branches over here. So for that, what I have to do, I have to draw the lower inferior surface of the brain. Okay, so let me draw the inferior surface of the brain and explain you the remaining features. So this part over here is called as your midbrain, okay, and down here this is called as your pons, and down here you got your medulla oblongata, and hanging down you have got your spinal cord like this, okay. Where is your cerebellum? So this is your cerebellum on either sides, right? So cerebellum is present behind what? Cerebellum is present behind your brainstem. Cerebellum is present behind your brainstem. Now, next important thing is that, you know, this is your pons, right? This is your midbrain, and down you have got your pons and medulla oblongata. So, what is happening over here? What is happening over here is that I told you there are two different arteries. What are those two different arteries? See, this artery which I am drawing right now is called as your right vertebral artery, and this artery is called as your left vertebral artery. Okay, this right and left vertebral artery, they are ascending up like this, right? They are ascending up, and these right and left vertebral artery are meeting at a point. Where is the point where they are meeting? They are meeting to a specific point that is called as pontomedullary junction. You see this particular junction between the pons and medulla oblongata, this junction is called as ponto. So this is what I was telling you, that these two vertebral arteries at the level of pontomedullary junction, they join together, right, and they form this particular artery which I am drawing right now. This artery is called as your basilar artery. Okay, this basilar artery on the top gives out two branches like this. So what are these two branches? I will talk about these two branches later on. But for now you understood this, that these two are the vertebral arteries joining together to form the basilar artery, right? Second important thing is that just beneath the basilar artery, just beneath these two arteries, from the basilar artery you see another branch that is coming like this, right? So this is a branch that is coming all the way like this. So this branch is supplying to the cerebellum like a tent. Completely it is supplying to the cerebellum like a tent. It is covering the top surface of the cerebellum. That is why you call this artery as superior cerebellar artery. This is called as superior cerebellar artery. This is called as superior cerebellar artery. Next important thing over here is that from this artery you see branches that are coming out like this. So these branches which are coming out over here are called as pontine arteries, which supply to your pons. So these branches over here, all these branches are called as your pontine arteries. Pontine arteries, okay, pontine arteries, multiple branches. Now after this pontine artery, down here you see another branch which is little bit longer here. So this branch is called as your labyrinthine artery. What is the name of this artery over here? This artery is called as your labyrinthine artery. This is called as your labyrinthine artery. Okay. Now after this labyrinthine artery, there are two more branches. Okay. So what are these two more branches? So one branch supplies to the cerebellum from the top here. Okay. In this way, these are the two branches that supply to the cerebellum from the top like this, right? And there are two more branches that supply to the cerebellum from the bottom here. Now what are these two branches? Okay. Let me draw first these branches and then I will explain you. See, this is one branch that is coming from the vertebral arteries on right and left. First of all, tell me that this is anterior, this is the superior surface or the base, the inferior surface of the brain. This is your inferior surface of the brain. In this inferior surface, if I am putting 2 points, so this is one point, this is another point. Now tell me which point is anterior, which point is posterior. The point which is on the top is anterior, the point which is on the bottom is posterior. So this artery over here, this particular artery over here is called as posterior. Why? Because it is on the back, posterior. And which surface is this? Inferior surface. Posterior inferior cerebellar artery. Cerebellar artery, which is abbreviated as PICA. Okay. In the same way, another artery that is directly emerging from the basilar artery like this, and that is supplying to the top of your cerebellum here, right? So this artery over here is called as your anterior inferior cerebellar artery, which is also called as ICA. So posterior inferior cerebellar artery, anterior inferior cerebellar artery. So these whatever branches I have just written over here. Additionally, there are two more branches. Let me write those also. From right vertebral artery, you see a branch. From left vertebral artery, you see a branch. So these two branches, they are supplying the middle part of your spinal cord. So this branch over here is called as your anterior spinal artery. These branches are your anterior spinal artery. Okay. So you have got anterior spinal artery. On the back side, you will have what? Posterior spinal artery. Okay. Right. So these arteries, whatever I have drawn here, these belong to your vertebrobasilar system. Now let us concentrate on the internal carotid system. So let us say that this foramen over here is called as your foramen spinosum. From this foramen spinosum, you see a branch that is coming like this. So this branch which is coming out of foramen spinosum is called as your internal carotid artery. This internal carotid artery gives out two branches. One branch is going on to the top like this, and another branch is going on to the left side like this, left as well as the right. So this branch which is going on to the top is called as anterior cerebral artery. Cerebral artery. Next branch over here is called as middle cerebral artery. So when I tell anterior cerebral and middle cerebral, there should be posterior cerebral. So this branch is called as your posterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral, middle cerebral and posterior cerebral. Now connecting the two anterior cerebrals, we have got a artery here. This is called as anterior communicating artery. Connecting the posterior cerebral with the internal carotid here, there is a branch called as posterior communicating artery. So how many communicating arteries we have got? This is called as your anterior communicating artery, anterior communicating artery, and this one over here is called as your posterior communicating artery. Okay. Now if I ask you that can you very clearly look at one important circle over here, right? So this circle which you can look here is called as your Circle of Willis. So what is this called as? Circle is called as Circle of Willis. Circle of Willis. Okay. So if I ask you Circle of Willis is formed by what arteries? You have to tell that Circle of Willis is formed by anterior communicating. It means what arteries take part in the formation of Circle of Willis? One is your anterior communicating artery, another one is your anterior cerebral artery, another one is your internal carotid artery. Next you have got the posterior communicating artery, posterior cerebral artery. The important question over here is that middle cerebral artery does not take part in the formation of the circle. This Circle of Willis, right, the middle cerebral artery does not take part in the formation of the Circle of Willis. This is the thing I want you to remember. Okay. So these are some of the very important things which you need to know regarding the blood supply of the brain. As I already told you, blood supply of the brain is done by two arteries, vertebrobasilar, and second one is internal carotid system. So this artery is your ICA, internal carotid artery. Here also internal carotid artery, right? So this is all you need to know regarding the blood supply to the brain. So thank you so much for watching my video. Goodbye.